Hello and welcome back everyone to Blended Geometry Node workshop for Jungle Vines. In the last lesson, we set ourselves up with a nice path tracing finding section that finds edges basically and gives us a sort of a vine look already. We need to make more controls though. We need to make more options for that. We need to make sure that for starters, we get ourselves a control for the length of these curves. So for us to do that, we're going to go all the way to the back like so. We're going to grab a simple node called trim curve, which will allow you, if we search for trim curve, this will allow you to basically control how the length is in regards to this setup. So we can play around with the values over here and see what it does. We'll firstly need to change instead of the factor, which is more of like a percentage wise, we'll need to change this to a length, which is going to give us the exact parameters for the length basically. And by changing this start, we can see that it's basically, we can hold shift actually, we can make the value a little bit more sensitive to how we control whilst clicking our mouse button and holding it. So that's going to give us direct feedback. So again, whilst holding left mouse button, if we were to click and hold and then drag it around, we're going to be able to control this value, but it's going to be really hard to get more precise values. Whilst holding shift, however, it's going to slow this value down and we're going to be able to actually visualize how this looks like. So we can already see that the starting point is basically showing where it's going to be trimmed out. And by controlling this value, we'll be able to control how it's going to be trimmed. And we can check what it does for the end values itself, but that's actually going to be going the opposite way, which we don't want this to happen. So let's go ahead and set this value back up to 1. And for the starting point, for the endpoint, we need to actually grab ourselves the spline length. So we'll grab the curvature length basically, and we'll tell where the endpoint of the trim curve is. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to click Shift and A, search for spline curve, which is going to be, sorry, not spline curve, spline length. There we go. We're going to attach this to the length, which is going to be at the end over here. So just by simply attaching this to the end, we can hold shift and we can see that it actually starts behaving more appropriately, as in it actually keeps the ones that are getting out of the edges to be growing out. The edges that split out basically are going to be kept the same. So they're not leaving behind gaps and some floating curves basically. Without this, if we have a look, we are not going to have the same result, as it'll start to remove some of the parts over here, as you can see. So that's why we need to determine that the end is going to be like so. And again, I'm going to go ahead and attach this. For the start point, we're going to go ahead and make ourselves to control actually some controls for the length itself. I'm going to set this up as 0. And yeah, let's go ahead and start setting it up for the length itself. We're going to go ahead and create ourselves a new input. We're going to call this length, like so. We're going to grab this length and attach it to the side. Let's go ahead and do that. So group input over here. And actually just by attaching this to the start, I don't think it's, yeah, I think we actually need to change this up a little bit. I want to make sure that when it's set to a value of 0 in length, it's actually going to be 0 over here. And once we start growing, it's actually going to start giving us the length that we want, applying it onto the mesh. So we actually need to inverse the value. And this time, instead of subtracting it by 1, we're going to subtract it from the spline length. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to hit Shift and A. We're going to get ourselves a new maths node. We're going to attach this, change this to subtract, like so. I'm going to attach this to the value. And just like we did previously, we're going to select the subtract, click Alt and S to invert the value. And that's how we're going to get ourselves the inverted value of 0 or nothing. Then as we start growing, we're going to get ourselves the full value, just like that. Now we already have a nice setup for the length, but I do want some more organic look. I want to make sure that it is set up for us so that we have a more random length in regards to the setup. Right now, everything is going to be more or less the same length. We don't want this to happen. Also, I think I will limit this length to 0. The reason being is just because once it touches 0, that's going to be it for in regards to the length. So first things first, we're going to change the length minimum, set to 0. We can keep the maximum as infinity. Depending on the type of object, we might need a different type of length. So that's going to be quite all right. So we can just set this up to 1 for now. Again, now going back to the randomness of the length, let's go ahead and start setting ourselves up with that. We're going to grab ourselves a value called random length. We're going to grab ourselves this node over here. Then we're going to set this up with our own custom parameters. So again, we're going to create ourselves yet another parameter. We're going to click on the plus. We're going to grab ourselves the input, and we're going to call us this length randomness. Randomness. There we go. All right. And now we're going to basically multiply this with the random value. The random value itself, though, is only going right now at the moment, only going from 0 to 1. So if we multiply this value with the length randomness, which let's say is 2, if we multiply this with a maximum of 1, so it's going to give us a value of length for 2. But the thing is, what if we want to make sure it also goes a little bit backwards? So what I mean by that is, right now, if we have the length set as, again, 2, we want some of the length to be not going only forwards, but also going a little bit backwards, as you can see over here. So we want to fluctuate between going back in and out like so when we only have a length of 2. The way we're going to do it is we're going to change this minimum value to -1. And this will basically give us the control over the strength of the length of randomness in both directions, giving us adding the length to this value and as well as removing it basically. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and add the value over here. Let's go ahead and move this section over to the side. We're going to firstly multiply this value with length randomness. I think I'm just going to go ahead, just move this around a little bit. Let's go ahead and grab ourselves a new math node. We can just make use out of this actually. We're going to hit Shift D and we're just going to put it off to the side. We're going to change this to multiply like so, and we're going to attach these two values like so. So length randomness and random value, we're multiplying them one by another. And then we simply need to attach this value that we're getting from the length randomness to the value over here. So the way we're going to do it is we're going to simply use another math node like so. This time we're going to use an additive instead of multiplier, because if we use a multiplier, the length randomness, the larger the value over here is, the more of an extreme values you're going to get. We want to make sure it's more constant in regards to the randomness, in regards to the range that we're having basically. So let's go ahead and make use out of additive. We're going to just move it a little bit off to the side like so. I think at some point we'll need to start looking into regards to cleaning up this bit of geometry nodes as well. But for now, let's go ahead and finish this up. So yeah, we need to simply go ahead and select both of them, move them off to the side and attach this. If we have a look, attach the multiplier to additive like so. And now the length randomness, we're going to be able to control the, well, randomness basically. You can see the more I increase it, the more of random length it's going to get, which is exactly what we want basically. I think that's quite all right. And actually one more thing that we should do is probably check how it looks like on the original mesh. Now that we are just basically getting ourselves the edge paths, we're turning this geometry into edge paths. We want to see it on the original mesh. So for us to do that, we're just going to move this a little bit off to the side, and we're going to get ourselves something called a join geometry. So let's go ahead and click Shift A, search for join geometry. There we go. We're going to attach it over here. And as you can see this time, instead of the circular type of a pattern, we're getting this sort of elongated shape, like a sort of a tic-tac form. So this means that we basically can attach multiple objects, multiple geometry onto this. Although in this particular case, we only want to attach one extra into this socket over here. So we're going to go ahead and grab ourselves a group input yet again, like so. We're going to attach the original geometry basically to this section like so. And this is what we're going to get. So it's already looking nice in regards to the pattern, but as you can see, we will still need to work on it. We'll need to offset the values a little bit as well, just to make sure it doesn't go within the geometry on itself. So we're going to, again, work on all of that in the next videos. So thank you so much for watching, and I will be seeing you in a bit.